And welcome back in. Greg Davis here with you. It is Priority. Yeah, that microphone will attack you over there. Greg Davis here with you. Nate Williams here with us as well. And we welcome into the studio Mr. Jeff Poor. Welcome in, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me.
We have finally done it.
Yeah.
I've gotten to be on your show a few times and finally got you here with me.
You got to be fresh off the road, too.
Who's that? You or me?
I came straight from Fairhope.
Oh, did you really?
We stopped one time.
Really? Drove straight in? Okay. Well, but you're up here for other things as well.
Yeah.
You didn't drive up here just to be on the show with me.
No. Doing a kind of a statewide thing, trying to knock out a bunch of meetings all at once.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I travel these roads a lot around the state.
So 65, getting right there at Alabaster.
I will be, that's what happens.
Yeah.
Well, after the, kind of right there past the Montevallo Airport, the airport exit, through, yeah, right in there. I'll be down your way next month. Hopefully, maybe I can come sit with you.
Yeah, come sit in, yeah.
I will be in Baldwin County, so it'll work out perfect.
Build a little home studio, so
good.
It's,
yeah, excellent.
This seems cramped, but not for a
Well,
home.
I've got one at home as well, so
yeah.
I know what you're saying. Jeff Poor here with us. He is the editor of 1819 News and also hosts his show down in the Mobile, Baldwin County, that whole general area down there on 9 to 12, right?
9 to noon, FM Talk 106.5, if you're ever down that way.
Yeah, or podcast.
Our podcast, we podcast almost all our content.
Yeah, just like we do.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Well, look, I don't know if you were listening coming in or not. We were talking about what everybody's talking about
Obviously,
this weekend.
Right.
Incompetence or conspiracy. What's your thoughts?
Maybe a little of both.
Yeah.
You have to try to be that incompetent, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's like leaving your keys in the car and walking away from it with the windows down. You expect someone to steal it or something, but maybe that's what I don't know if they wanted that to happen. It's royally backfired, but think about it. I mean, like, I've been to some of these presidential events over the years, Greg.
I never have, so tell me.
Well, so I covered Trump 2016, and I was in Florida. I was the Florida guy. I've probably been to 40, 50 Trump rallies.
Oh, okay.
I've seen Ben Carson. I've been going to presidential campaign events since the 2004 cycle. And the way it works is you got to, if you're in the media, if you're TV, you got to get there like 6-7 hours early. You go set up your equipment and everything is done. Then you have to leave the premises and they do a sweep. If you're print media like I usually have been, you have to get there 3 hours before. But then they lock everything down and the area is secured. And I've been to where the president, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, obviously. I've not been to a Joe Biden event. I got off the road after 2020.
So you were doing all that in your former role with Breitbart.
Breitbart. I'm still at Breitbart.
Okay.
When Bannon was running Breitbart, I had a different role. But anyway, so like it is, you could tell. So like Ben Carson, Newt Gingrich, Ted Cruz, they had Secret Service details, but they weren't as like beefed up. Mm-hmm. And you could tell the difference in the professionality and just how serious they were. And what I think happened is, I think right now the Secret Service is stretched thin. I think any level of law enforcement is stretched thin, but I don't think Trump got the A team. He may not have got the B or C team. The B team may be with Kamala Harris or whoever, but he didn't get the best of the best. And what they do when they don't, because you think about the Secret Service, Greg, and it's like they have to staff up every presidential cycle.
Yeah.
They don't just have these people waiting for the next presidential
waiting for 3
cycle.
years. Yeah.
So they have these contract employees, and they'll have Secret Service people that are calling the shots, but they rely on local law enforcement. They sign people up for a few months or whatever, but you didn't get I don't think you got the best team possible there, which is kind of stunning because he's a presumptive Republican nominee and he's a former president. But I think he got kind of the B team. They didn't go through the process of doing what they needed to do with the sweeps. They got lackadaisical, and just the way this Biden administration has been. Never underestimate the federal government's ability to be incompetent. Government at all levels tends to be incompetent.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier today, and you would think the Secret Service wouldn't be incompetent, but why wouldn't it be?
But you could just think about it, because we have a kind of a Hollywood-ized view of government. We think of like black helicopters coming in, and you know the best of the best coming down, rappelling down a rope or something, and just taking whatever it is and securing the area. Government's not that way. That's all in the movies. So that's our perception of it. But what I really think happened, Greg, was like I just think they didn't have the best people possible in that circumstance. And that's the way it happened. And, I mean, was it on purpose? I mean, because there's sort of an attitude about Trump, right? It's like, it's Donald Trump. Who cares? You had members of Congress wanting to strip him of his security detail. You know, all these things that make me think that they were just kind of okay with what he had, and it has really, like I said, royally backfired on him.
Yeah. Well, so you've been to these events. I mean, you park. I'm sure there's got to be a security point you go through, metal detectors, all of that. How would that just be inside the perimeter? I just can't see how the guy parked has an AR on him, and can walk up that close, and then get on top of a building. I just in my mind can't understand how that can happen.
Because I think you look at the building was kind of outside one of the perimeters. Yeah. Why wouldn't those buildings be in the perimeter?
Well, yeah, that's one question, yes.
Because I would have thought that's the way it's typically done. Now, the other problem with this, we never had a president besides Donald Trump who could throw these big events. And like I said, I've been well over 100 of these, and I've been through the security. You got to, if you want to go, you got to get cleared ahead of time. You have to talk to the press people for the candidate, tell them you're coming. They ask for all kinds of information, social security number, like they really do a check. And the problem for the Secret Service when it comes to Trump, he has massive rallies, lots of people.
Well, there were 15,000 people, I think.
Did Hillary Clinton draw people like that?
Oh, no.
Did Ted Cruz? Did Big Carson? Did Newt Gingrich? Did these
Barack
people?
Barack Obama did.
Yeah, it's been Obama and Trump, but I don't think the Secret Service in its current iteration is equipped to handle these massive Trump rallies. Now, maybe it was at one time in the 16 and 20 cycles. I don't think it is now.
Well, I'm looking for answers. I don't know that we'll get them, though.
Probably not. I mean, there's just
cover your own self.
And like
all the way down the line.
I know, like House Oversight's going to try to take a look at this, but like, do we ever get real answers from these Republican or Democrat?
The people, the director will come up there and say they don't know,
or take the fifth or something, and
kill the time, and Democrats will defend it.
I mean, Democrats will get speeches, and they'll run out the clock.
Time. That's the way it works.
We're still wondering what happened in Benghazi, even with Trey Gowdy, right?
Yeah, still wondering. So I just. I don't know that we'll ever know. I think this is going to be another one of those things that's going to go down in history. Everybody will believe what they want to believe.
I mean, like, and the other part, I mean, like, the iconic photo with Trump standing up and these guys fist pumped should have never happened.
No.
But somehow it did. I just, a lot went wrong there, and so much went wrong. It's gross incompetence, but, like, it was allowed to get to that point, I guess.
Well, and I think it definitely was at the A-team, because the A-team's going to be with the president and the president's wife, and you get that. They're currently holding office and are the decision makers, so of course. But boy, I mean, some of those agents had to be way down the line that were on the ground there. Even I mean, we had some couldn't even holster their gun. Well, in such a panic.
Now I know this. And then she's taken not the one. Well, one of the female Secret Service agents has been with Trump a long time. If you watch this long enough, you'll start to recognize who they are.
No, the one with the bun.
Yeah,
she's been around.
You'll start to recognize some of these people because they're always with their president or their vice president. But so like they know the tendencies. But, like, we never had a situation where you have a past president who already has a detail and then maybe a presidential candidate who gets a – I mean, like, I don't think they really game planned this out at all.
Might have been a mixed bag or something.
Yeah, well, who's really in
Wires crossed.
charge? And like the other problem with these contract employees, I mean, they don't know the protocol. Now they drill, and they practice, and they run through every scenario supposedly, but I don't think that. Well, that clearly was not the case with this team.
Well, we've definitely heard that the Secret Service is saying that the local law enforcement were supposed to watch that building, and so. I guess everybody's going to blame other people. All right, let's jump to the phones here. Mike is with us up in North Alabama. Hey, Mike, go right ahead.
Hey, guys, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
I was just going to jump in for a minute. I was listening to the show. I'm actually retired, federal law enforcement. I had 30 years on the job. I did a lot of protective details. Actually, we worked with the Secret Service when President George W. Bush came and visited some of our facilities. So I don't want to second guess anything that Secret Service did, but I know you guys had some questions.
Yeah.
And wondering kind of how maybe some things were rolled out or what the protocols were. If you had a kind of a generic answer, I'd be happy to kind of give you the best answer I could for maybe why somebody chose to do something the way it was.
Well, do you think it's feasible that a 20-year-old, a kid living at home can come up there with an AR kit and just park and walk up and get that close to the president and climb up on a roof without being noticed until it's too late? Is that possible?
Well, and again, I know probably less than you guys have, than you've researched on the whole thing. But so just like I said, just generic real world type stuff. What I know, that building was a privately owned business, so I'm sure it was cleared to do whatever, it wasn't like it was a government-owned building or something that the local law enforcement or the Secret Service would have had ready access to. This is an independent business. I don't know if they did business on the weekend or after hours or what.
Yeah, I heard it was
I've heard
like
a lot
glass
about
company
a ladder
or something.
Right.
Was there a ladder? I mean, just happened to be a ladder leaning up against the building. Those are all questions that you're just like, how does did all of these things just fall into place for him to be able to get up? It just almost seems unbelievable.
Well, we really don't know about the ladder. There's a couple of things there. If you've ever been in the drive-thru at a fast food restaurant, you've seen the ladder that accesses the roof of the restaurant, because like most of the time
utility.
Their HVAC stuff is on the roof, right?
Yeah, utility.
So it's just, it's got that little cage that kind of surrounds it, and then it's padlocked at the bottom. But
so this guy just shows
bolt
up.
Cutters, you could access that.
So my question is, he just comes and happens to find a ladder. I mean, it just all seems like there's too many things.
Right.
And until somebody can explain to me how it all happened.
I think it's either a roof access ladder, or he did a little bit of recon. Maybe he worked there at one time. I don't know. Or, his dad worked there or whatever. But, maybe he brought his own little giant ladder from home. It didn't look like a very tall building, maybe 2 stories at the most, to get up there. But on an outer perimeter like that, if he didn't have to go through any kind of a checkpoint, it was in adjoined a rural, a neighborhood or something, and he just could drive up, and then if he had the rifle in any kind of a concealment, didn't have to be in a hunting rifle case. It could have been in a bag or a backpack, with a collapsible stock rifle.
Yeah.
And really wouldn't have drawn a whole lot of attention.
Well, a lot of things had to fall into place. So we appreciate your call, Mike. That's a good perspective, man. Thank you.
All right. Thank y'all. Be careful.
Thank you. Yeah, we'd love to get you guys' perspective as well. 205-941-1011. We've got Jeff Poore here in studio with us from the Jeff Poore Show, and also 1819 News. And we'll get to other things as well today, all right? So we've got a lot to talk about. You're going to want to stay with us as long as you possibly can here on a Monday evening. Truth 101, WXJC, it's Priority Talk. And we're back in 9 minutes until 6 p.m. Jeff Poore in studio with us from 1819 News. Am I saying all that right? 1819 News,
1819
editor,
News.
and the Jeff Poore Show.
That's it, yeah.
And
Breitbart News.
And Breitbart News. I want to get into more of some of that as we develop here, but we're talking about the assassination attempt. I don't know to call it an assassination or not, because someone did die.
Right.
You might have to say
it's a
the
fine line.
assassination attempt on Trump.
Okay, yeah, this weekend, and that's just don't let that get lost. That at least one person has definitely lost their life. You've got a couple others that, last I heard, seems as though they're stable and improving. But
well, like when you first heard it, like what was your reaction? I know, like people, like like prayer's a very powerful thing, but like I couldn't help but be angry. Like, especially being in this racket of kind of conservative, centric policy and reporting and journalism, and just having this kind of like thrust upon me all the time, like we're the problem, we're the ones who are responsible for the political violence. It's you guys, and this is the political violence is coming from the left, even though we're the ones who are always being told, you guys need to cool it,
I think it does come from the right too. There's language used on both sides by some people.
Yeah,
I think on the left it's more of a mainstream thing. I think on the right you've got radical people that say crazy things.
This is like how I make my living, and the Breitbart guys are part of the problem, and you 1819 guys are part of the problem. And you're just like, well, no, we're not the ones doing this. What about January 6th? But, I don't think you could compare the two at all.
Yeah. No, but it does come from both. I think there's there's examples you can find on both sides. Now, is it a flood more on one side than the other? I'd say yes. And over and over and over and over and over and over. I mean, the way Trump has been castigated and called and
Trump is
labeled
Hitler,
and all of these kind of things are
but
just.
There's
unhinged people out there who believe it.
You and I talked about this on my show. It's just like when you put government as your higher power, which is what the left does. Not everybody, but you think of government as a solution to all your problems. You find that they're way more emotionally dedicated, to what happens in politics or what they're watching on TV in politics.
You're right.
And I think that's more of a. And now, not everybody on the right is going to church on Sunday and doing what they're supposed to do, but you find on the left that you're looking toward government as your higher power, and I just think you get caught in that kind of trap at least these kind of things.
No, I think you're onto something there. If a lot of us look at it and go, well, look, we're going to do what we can, but if it doesn't go our way, God's still in control.
Right.
And,
but you're looking at
But
it,
if you're on the other side of that and you're kind of an anti-God, you don't believe in God,
or if you're just like
or
agnostic or whatever,
or agnostic, neutral,
and you think the world's it's just not a fair place, and government's not making it fair, and I should be the one driving the nice car and have the nice house or whatever, and you get trapped in that, and you're like act out on it.
Yeah. Well, when I first heard it, ironically, you have a hat on for the Mississippi Braves.
Right.
You didn't get to hear on the way in. I was at a Mississippi Braves game Saturday evening. Game started at 6 p.m. Central. So I'd already been by earlier that day and bought some tickets. My son's over there. So I'd bought some tickets. Couldn't download them in the parking lot. They send them to your text.
Right.
And I couldn't download them. And the guy told me, he said, they'll download when you get out of the parking lot. He said, we have a lot of dead spots. You don't get good coverage here. And they did. So I'm going into the game, and I start getting text messages. Hey, Trump's been shot. I'm trying to get on Twitter and find out what's going on. Can't get anything. I mean, just can't even get anything hardly. So I was very frustrated when I heard about it. I believed it was true because people were texting me, but I didn't know what was going on or whatever. So I was very frustrated. But I guess my real ultimate feeling was almost not really surprised. I wasn't surprised. Were you?
A little bit. And then it gets back to like the Secret Service detail and going through what you have to go through to get into one of these. I didn't know the details
at that point. No,
I didn't know that this where the shooter was, and how is this possible? As many times as I have been through and gotten the pat down, had them get the dogs out to go sniff through your like laptop and make sure it's not some kind of explosive device and everything. You're just like, how could this possibly happen? And then your mind starts going all kinds of crazy places. You can kind of rein it back in, figure out what's going on. But the initial reaction is like, this should have never, ever have happened.
No, but I wasn't surprised. I thought, we've been setting ourselves up for something like this to happen in this country. I mean, quite honestly, the way politics have gotten so, polarized, and the vitriol, the hatred, the threats that have been made. We've all seen the clips. We've heard the audio clips.
Do you think this changes it?
Maybe temporarily. Maybe temporarily.
Really?
Maybe people
I don't know.
ease off.
And is Trump going to give a speech about unity? I don't know that that'll really matter. I think there's a sentiment in this country right now where people are upset with their institutions. The government, Hollywood, high finance, marketing, all of these like elite institutions in our country, and they're sort of just like mad at them, but they're not really knowing where to direct their anger. The best place to is at your elected officials.
Yeah, people don't. There's not another outlet hardly.
Right.
You don't know where to look when you feel done wrong or disenfranchised, and so politicians they get the credit and they get the blame, more than they deserve in both ways.
Yeah, it's just honestly. Like you got to be careful like deifying these guys. I agree. Because I always get. I mean, I'm in this. I'm at like a point in my career where like they're all a dime a dozen. You get desensitized to it. But you gotta like kind of step out of that sometimes. Like, wow, people really look up to these elected officials a little too much sometimes.
I agree with you. Absolutely. And like you and I, the more you get to know them, you certainly can respect the work they do and how they put themselves out there. But you go, they're people just like us.
Yeah, they're good because it's and the biggest eye-opening experience for me. I moved to Washington D.C. in 2007, and then all these Ivy Leaguers and people like that. They turned out not to be like what I thought they were built up in my head.
Yeah. All right. We'll be back. We've got another hour to go, and we'll talk about Vice President pick, J.D. Vance, and also we'll get into some state issues as well. That's really what we had planned for today anyway. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back after the top of the hour. And we're back in hour number 2, Priority Talk Radio. It's good news, Christian values here on Truth 101 WXJC. We're here until 7. We are live. And we're streaming our video live at our Priority Talk Facebook page if you want to head over there and check it out. We're taking phone calls and text. I'm seeing all of your text messages. I just hadn't read as many of them, but I am seeing them. And for the most part, agree with what you guys are saying. So keep them coming, 205-941-1011. Phone calls are welcome as well. We've got Nate and I have Jeff Poore here in studio with us, and he is with 1819 News as the editor, chief editor, something like that.
The editor-in-chief.
Editor-in-chief. Okay, there we go. And then title, also host the Jeff Poore Show out of Mobile, Baldwin County, all of that area down there. And I do want to get into that some because I want to talk about this Congressional District 2. I want to get into some of that. We got a lot to talk about. We got to hurry, though. But we've talked about the assassination. I don't know what else more there is to say there about that. Except I think it'll be covered up. I don't think anyone will be held accountable, and life's just going to move on. That's what I think. There'll be hearings, and you're going to get little tidbits here and there, but it's never all going to come together. I don't believe.
And the government moves so slow under investigations, and everything's got every rock's got to be unturned and figure out what's going on, and then they look at it, and the public may know 5 years
maybe
from now or
look
something.
To see who. And I said this earlier. Look and see who commits suicide, and that could tell you some
like
things
a
as
Vince
well.
Foster.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying. Look and see if it starts coming up. Hey, so and so on the security detail that day, or local policeman, or couldn't live with the guilt and committed suicide. I mean, so that's something to look out for as well. Do have the Republican National Convention going on in Milwaukee. It started this afternoon, just not too far in, right after Donald Trump secured the votes, the delegates from the floor for his nomination. He announces J.D. Vance out of the state of Ohio to be his vice presidential running mate, and then he was confirmed as well. So that is the ticket. It is Trump-Vance, which Nate pointed out is very close to Trump-Pence. Kind of sounds similar.
I saw a couple signs where you remove the P and the E, replace it with the V and the A, and it's the same sign. because Pence and Vance.
Save a little money, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, you just
maybe
scratch
they
it
already
out.
had the graphic
Scratch
work
out
done.
the date, yeah.
And I'm sure they're printing the signs right now. There's some printing companies all over the country probably. Files came, boom, gone to the presses. Were you surprised by that? What's your thoughts? You've worked at D.C., you've been around presidential politics.
Yeah, well, he seemed like I probably about a week ago, if you'd asked me, I would have put money on Marco Rubio. Just seemed like the safe pick, but things changed, right? It was a good Bergeron, Rubio, Vance. I mean, those are the names you're hearing, and Vance is probably something kind of in between. It may not be the safest pick, but it's something that Trump, I guess, feels comfortable with.
Mm-hmm. Only been really in government for 2 years as a senator.
He's kind of more of an ideological figure before that. Wrote Hillbilly Elegy.
Yeah. I've never read that. I wasn't that familiar with it.
And well, I knew it because they had him on Fox all the time, and they made the movie out of the book. And I was like, okay. I
missed all of that somewhere. The Hillbilly Elegy.
Well, it's kind of about like the forgotten people, right? Mm-hmm. Like this, just like everything's moved on, but you still have this middle class in parts of the country, and it hits that chord with the populism. Mm-hmm. And how, as I think so much like the Trump phenomenon. Whatever you think of Donald Trump, like him or hate him, but how is something like that possible? How does a phenomenon like that, once in a lifetime sort of populism, kind of come along? And to understand that, you look at guys like Vance, who kind of comes along and runs for Senate, like, what's he doing? But wins, and now vice. I mean, it's a crazy story how he got from where he is and all the
really
way
poor,
really poor. Served in the Marines.
Family, sort of a victim of of all these trade deals that basically killed our small towns, factories, and such.
Yeah,
so he's lived it out.
And it's just like decimating rural America.
Yeah,
and that's sort of that was the Trumpian response. Like in Alabama, and like I told you, I go to these Trump rallies all the time in 2016, and I always see like one guy was always there. And I was like, well, I need to go talk to him because you start recognizing people. And when you see people that are following Trump around, like it's like a Grateful Dead sort of phenomenon or something, like, well, let's go figure out the story. And you talk to somebody, his parents, Monroeville, Alabama, mm-hmm. both worked for Vanity Fair. And all these trade deals, NAFTA, the jobs go, well, first they go to Mexico, Latin America, then they go to China, then they head to Southeast Asia. But he's like, well, Trump's the response to that. Mm-hmm. And getting Trump like that, if you could understand that, and I think the Vance perspective explains a lot of it, explains kind of where the Trump phenomenon gained so much ground.
Makes sense. I was kind of neutral on it as far as him. He asked me this afternoon, Nate did. I said, I think maybe Rubio because he's really good at making the case and he's good on the mic.
Yeah, well, he also would have brought in like the establishment, right, quote unquote, together with. But I don't necessarily need that at this moment in time.
No,
I think most people are kind of country club Rockefeller Republicans or Tea Party types or the MAGA wings of the party are kind of unified in going after what's going on in Washington D.C. right now.
Yeah. Well, tell us about your history because you've got I'm mentioning what you're doing now, but I mean, you were in D.C. You mentioned that briefly. Kind of give people the story.
Auburn University started, got a building science degree hanging on the wall.
Do you really?
That's all. It's a wall decoration.
Degree.
Yeah. Decided I want to be a sports writer. I got my first job out of Auburn was in Mobile, and I worked as an estimator. The company went bankrupt. And I enrolled at South Alabama, so I was going to be a sports writer. Mm-hmm. This is not for me. Ended up being in politics. Finished South, head to Washington, D.C. I'm up there for 8 years. I started out with a nonprofit called the Media Research Center. Brett Bozell, who's William Buckley's nephew, kind of a media watchdog, think tanky kind of thing. 3 years there. I got to work for Tucker Carlson, got fired from MSNBC. He started the Daily Caller. Mm-hmm. And after I was about a year down the road, he hired me, And I was like your kind of media reporter. I tracked what was going on television, and I got to work for Tucker for 3 years. And then Steve Bannon came. When Andrew Breitbart died, Bannon took over Breitbart.com, and he offered, who I met my wife working for Tucker, but he offered both of us jobs. He's like, look, I'll double your pay, and you can live anywhere you want. And we were trying to figure out a D.C. exit plan.
Wow. Double your pay and get out of D.C. Sign me up.
So we took the Breitbart gig and moved to
Tucker.
We moved to Destin, Florida.
Wow.
Lived in Destin for a year and a half. My wife decided she didn't really like that. She didn't want to do journalism. She went to law school. She's a lawyer now. But long story short, Bannon goes to work in the White House, and when he gets back out, he gets in that Doug Jones, Roy Moore contest. Well, he goes really hard for Roy Moore.
Yep.
I get sucked back into the Alabama game because I'm an Alabama guy. And from that point forward, I'm doing all the coverage for the right after the election. I'm all in on the 17 Alabama special election cycle. That's kind of got me back in the Alabama game because the guys at Yellowhammer were like, hey, I'd worked for Yellowhammer once before, kind of as a D.C. guy when Cliff Sims ran it. And then I left there. And then the Yellowhammer people said, hey, this is long after Cliff had left. Why don't you come back and write for us? And that sort of got me back in the Alabama game. And this is after 8 years at D.C. Dale Jackson, who's a radio host in Huntsville.
Yep.
Hey, I think you'd be a great radio host.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't know. But, okay, we'll go try it. So my wife's finishing up law school. She goes clerk for a federal judge. And she's in Tallahassee. And then I take a radio show at Huntsville, and I'm going home on the weekends. And long story short, get in the Huntsville market, there for a year and a half, and then COVID happens, and Cumulus is furloughing people. So friend Sean Sullivan, who I've been going on his show for 10 years at that time, why don't you come and work for me? You can broadcast from anywhere you want. And we moved we buy a house in Fairhope and wind up there. And then Brian Dawson, when he starts 1819 News, they go through their sort of like...
Ray Mellick was the original editor, and his goal was really just to get it started.
They got it started.
I know he was in here with us many times. He was just to get it going.
They got it going, and one day, like, Brian just kind of shows up in Fairhope. Hey, what would you think about this, running this? I was like, and then here we are. So I kind of dialed back on some of the Breitbart stuff. I'm an editor there still. I'm still the editorial calls on the masthead. But I'm the full-time editor-in-chief at 1819 News, and I do the radio show in Mobile, and I've been writing for a newspaper called Lanyap in Mobile for about 20 years now. So I've been at this game a long time.
Man, you got about as hands in many fires as I do, I think.
So we can make really a living at this, so
Yeah, piecemeal it together.
Yeah.
Piecemeal. Well, I want to back up because I think a lot of our listeners would probably be interested to know about your time working with Tucker.
It really, those monologues when you used to watch him on Fox, and now you see him, doesn't do him so much on his podcast, but it's exactly what the editorial meetings were like. So we'd have an editorial meeting at 10 a.m. every morning. We're right there at Farragut Squares where the offices were.
He'd just start pontificating.
He would. I mean, it was, and this is like really eye-opening for me because I'd been at a think tank, and it wasn't really in D.C. It was in Alexandria. But I got there, and you're surrounded by all these people who are like, kind of, they're kind of known in the bubble, in the D.C. bubble of what they do, and the names and stuff, and like you kind of learn like the cocktail party circuit and where who to talk to and who's a good source, and that was like my first real job in this game. Yeah,
but Tucker, so you'd already seen it. Did you feel like he would translate to television like that?
So he had been on TV.
He was on Fox. He kind of did the weekends.
Well, he was MSNBC before that.
I didn't even realize that.
And he got fired by MSNBC.
How in the world did MSNBC have him on?
Well, before MSNBC, what he was known for, he was Tucker Carlson on Crossfire on CNN. It had James Carville.
Yeah, I remember Crossfire.
Paul Begala on the left, and then the late Robert Novak and Tucker Carlson on the right. Mm-hmm. And then that sort of all fell apart when Jon Stewart had his little conniption fit on Crossfire. But they ended that show. It used to be at GW right there in that auditorium, and they would tape it every day at like 3 o'clock or something right there. And that's as soon as he got cut loose by CNN is when he went to MSNBC. They gave him a shot for a little while. It was like kind of a mid-afternoon show. That's Willie Geist, where he got his start. He's on Morning Joe now. Yeah. And then he gets fired by MSNBC, and then that's when you start seeing him on Fox, kind of, as a guest, and then as the fill-in guy, and then the weekend guy, and then ultimately he gets a show.
I was really surprised when he got that slot after O'Reilly. I was really surprised, when they put him. I thought, I don't know about this.
But the thing about Fox, at that time at Fox News, they could have put like Mr. Potato Head on at 8 p.m. and gotten big numbers. Yeah. I mean, O'Reilly just happened to be there when they founded Fox, and it was a big gamble to go work for Fox. Yeah, because back then it was everybody watched CNN.
Upstart, yeah.
And then MSNBC, before MSNBC was like super liberal. I mean, guys, MSNBC tried to be straight down the middle. It was Joe Scarborough before he became what he is. I mean, they had Pat Buchanan. They really did try to be like a kind of a down the middle objective outlet, and
then at some point,
well, Keith Olbermann really drew in left wing viewers, and then they said, well, this is going to be our brand.
Then it's Sharpton and everybody else.
Right, yeah.
All right, let's take a break. It's 18 minutes after the hour. Priority Talk Radio. Jeff Poor in studio with us, taking your phone calls or text 205-941-1011. And we're back in. It's 21 minutes after the hour on this Monday evening, Priority Talk Radio. And Nate and I in studio, and Jeff Poor here with us from the Jeff Poor Show, Breitbart 1819 News. And so a lot of our folks probably interested in 1819 News as well. I mean, just came on the scene like gangbusters.
Yeah. Has
done a phenomenal job. You guys, before you got there and since you've been there, just a phenomenal job. I love Brian. Man, here's what I tell people this. Back when I started doing this show in 2011, I was having to go out and dig all this stuff up and try to talk about it and tell about it. And it was hard. You guys just put it right there for me every night. You know what I mean? It's like the stuff that I need to be talking about. Y'all are there on it. And uncovering it, exposing it, putting light on dark. Just talk about the vision.
Yeah, I no one's ever tried it. I mean, I won't say that I've been like a long-time veteran in the Alabama political game, but I'm aware of it enough. And, before, even before like a Yellowhammer and APR came along, you really leaned on the old legacy newspapers and, the Advertiser especially, but the Birmingham News and the Press Register. But like, as the newspapers sort of died off, and then now we're
AL.com became it.
I mean, now we're in this kind of brave new world of online journalism, but I never thought conservatives had a real, like, quote unquote conservative voice. Now Yellowhammer, and they do good work, and I was a part of Yellowhammer 2 times in my career. It is right of center, but it's not like they're advocating for business, and there's a lot of merit to that, and that business deserves a voice.
It's got its niche, but they're not on the moral. They're not on the moral issues and things like that.
That's not their. I mean, they're not gonna go woke on you,
right?
But they're not gonna go die on that hill either. And I think it's important to have this voice, and really, like, talking to Brian about my vision, it was like, Alabama needs like a Breitbart style sort of approach to a lot of what's going on, not really beholden to one set of advertisers or anything like that. And the hope was like, because we could talk about these things and write about these things without having to worry about who we're making mad or whatever. But we all have to, at the end of the day, have to kind of agree that there's some things that the state doesn't need to be doing. Gambling's a good example, but the state does a lot of good things. We need to report it from that perspective for this audience, because this audience does not have something reporting or talking about what issues are problematic to them. It's always been steered toward toward this era of like economic development and all of that, which is fine, but it's so misplaced, and we're not talking about why we need to protect certain institutions, protect like libraries, and you look at what's going on inside the classroom, and all of this going on in the country. If you sit at Fox News at night, you know what's going on. Is it going on here in Alabama? Well, how do you know?
And that's the thing. I tell our people, when I travel around the state and speak, and I'm with a lot of pastors, I'm in a lot of churches, and I go to I speak there as well, but I typically get into a lot of places where they're not talking politics a lot, or about political or these kind of issues from a moral issues from a political angle. And I go in and I go, guys, I know y'all see it on Fox News, but let me tell you something. It's here. It's not just there. It's here.
That may be
and
slower.
You just aren't seeing it.
It may be slower getting here, but you're right.
Yeah, well, you know what's going to come here because you see it going on there.
Because,
and then it comes here.
And it's fascinating, Greg, because like the people who are like trying to institute like a lot of this like just radical agenda stuff, well, they're getting it from look at how cool look at what like the more progressive sort of way of living and how awesome that is in these big cities or in the West Coast or whatever. Let's bring that to Alabama and open up these young minds to all these like foreign concepts, out of the mainstream concepts to the culture in Alabama. And there's no pushback against it because I think just people hadn't been aware of it.
Yeah, it's here, and that's what I try to tell people. And I point them and I say, but I'm still amazed how many places I go and I mention 1819 News and they look at me blank. And that's amazing to me that my people would not know what you guys are doing.
Well, it just takes time. Well, I mean,
and some of them don't want to know, possibly as well. They're not looking. They're not trying to find out.
But this is a hard state to cover. As you well know, it's very tribal.
Mm-hmm.
And like, but the stuff that's going on, like, you've got to look at it as, and I always get nervous when I talk about like collective or whatever, but the decisions that are made in Montgomery impact everybody, right? And because every part of the state thinks it's the redheaded stepchild. If you're not in Birmingham or Montgomery or in the corridor,
that's true.
You think you're the redheaded stepchild.
Yeah.
Well, your tendency is to disengage from what's going on at the state level, and what I'm trying to do here, or what we're trying to do here, so no, you need to be paying attention to this. I mean, this is whether you're in Mobile or Henniger, you need to know what is going on here. This is going to be the law. This is going to be the policy, because government does one size fits all, and they're not going to, be it school choice or whatever, they're not going to respect, your individual situation.
Absolutely not. No, it's a broad stroke, and that's just the way government works. And so you better be looking out for your interest.
And then those guys get in those chambers and they're all piling around or whatever in Montgomery, and that's what happens.
Yeah. All right, Jeff Poor in studio with us. It's Priority Talk Radio here on this Monday evening. I do want to get into some of the state issues as well, including you mentioned it, so I do want to get to gambling. I don't think you and me and a few other people probably got as good a feel for what went on with gambling outside the legislators.
Right.
As good a feel for it as anyone does, and maybe for where it's headed as well. So we can talk about that and some of these other local issues also. But you do want to check it out, 1819news.com. That's just 1819news.com. All right, pretty simple.
Pretty easy.
If you're not following, I think our listeners are, because we reference
and get
stories.
Our newsletter. You don't even have to go to the site to get everything kind of wrapped up for you. Sign up on the website.
Right. That's right. All right, so head over there. It is a nonprofit as well, people.
Right.
We need to talk about that. It's nonprofit. That's why you're not beholden to the advertisers like others are for your coverage. All right, take a break. Bottom of the hour. We'll be right back. All right, we're back in. It's our final half hour in the program here on this Monday evening. Greg Davis, Nate Williams, and Mr. Jeff Poor in studio with us with 1819 News and the Jeff Poor Show. I encourage you, you can't listen on the terrestrial radio here to his program down in South Alabama.
The constitutional amendment that thou shalt not have casino gambling in Baldwin County, it's over. Because all it takes is a simple vote of the Alabama legislature to okay it, and they could do it despite the wishes of the people down there. And they would. Look at what they did with the BP oil spill settlement. If they get in the cash crunch and somebody says, hey, we will rescue you, state of Alabama, if you allow us to build a casino right there at Gulf State Park, simple vote, majority vote of the legislature. And that's not hard to get if you get a bunch of Democrats and some rogue Republicans together. So that's why this constitutional amendment keep it in place to keep the 2/3. I mean, the 3/5 majority and the vote of the people is so important. It's not just I mean, if you won a lottery, fine, but like you got to be real careful here and not let a lot of these riders on hitch their wagons to a lottery vote.
Well, and a lot of the legislators, they say we can't just have a lottery because of all the special interest. Well, first of all, it's all special interest, everything down there.
Yes.
So, but the truth is, we can't have just a lottery because of the legislators. Not necessarily all the ones there now, but the ones there since '99, because they've passed all these constitutional amendments.
Right.
You didn't have those in '99, and you were able to vote on a straight-up lottery. You can't do that any longer.
No,
with all these constitutional amendments, it cannot happen.
Well,
and that's not the fault of special interest. That's the fault of the legislature for passing them.
And Greg, if you do away with the constitutional amendment, right, the Porch Creek Indians are governed by federal law.
Yep.
Who knows the way, especially if you have a Biden administration in there, when you have that Class 3 gaming, and how might that Department of Interior interpret that? Well, you could have casinos. Check, they got a lottery.
We would have no say-so in it.
Yeah. So you got to be like, I mean, like this is why this is like the hill to die on, guys. I mean, the last day of the session, big gambling had the legislature tied up. They kept the budgets from passing. You
remember, I was on with you that morning about 11 a.m. I was on your show, and it was like, I said, I went back and listened. I was like, yeah, we're hearing some rumors about gambling, but we've got all these other good bills we're hoping are going to pass today. And then about the time I got off with you is when it took off fast.
Big gambling tied up, guys. Big gambling tied up the Alabama legislature. And last time I checked, gambling is still prohibited in Alabama. Think about that. Do you think that's going to change when gambling is legal in Alabama? No. They were able to
hijack.
Just shut down the Alabama legislature, and it's illegal in Alabama. What do you think it's going to be like if it was legal?
Yep. That's exactly right. You're right. It is the hill to die on at this time, because if you lose that, the money, the power, the influence, you think what it is now, what will it be then?
Look at Florida. I mean, gambling runs Tallahassee. Go look at some of these other states.
Mississippi as well.
That have done this. Are you telling me that's not our future? I don't think that is a good. It's bad public policy. The state, and you could talk about the money and all of that, but that money's coming from somewhere. It is not a good funding source. I think we're being sold a bill of goods on this lottery stuff, and the people aren't getting really what they are being sold.
Well, it doesn't create any money. It just moves money around, and you have to lose, for the state to get $1, the people have to lose $3. That's
it takes advantage of the most vulnerable people, and it's Chris Blackshear, who was kind of the architect of all this, right? He's on the Dale Jackson show, and Dale's like, I like to gamble. Dale's kind of, a rogue guy. And then he pops him the question, Representative, would you want casino gambling back in Phoenix City, Alabama? And he couldn't. I mean, he couldn't say yes to that. No. Why do you think it's okay for people to have that, other people to have that in their neck of the woods? Why would you want it there? Why is it okay in Birmingham, Alabama, but not in Phoenix City?
That's exactly right, and that was quite a moment. I heard that, and the funny thing was, I had asked Representative Blackshear that same question at the State House, and he just kind of blew it off and moved on. He could have been better prepared, because I had already asked it, to him, not on the air. But because of the history there with Phoenix City and the murder and all of that took place around that, back in, when was that? The
50s, yeah.
50s, yeah. I would say 50s or 60s, 50s. I mean, if you don't know that story, go back and look it up. It's
Albert
quite
Patterson
scary.
assassinated.
And
he was going to be the AG.
To shut down gambling, and they killed him. I mean, that's what they did. So, it's I was told if it didn't pass this year, that it would be dead for a while. Because this will be the third year, then you got re-election coming up. But I don't believe it.
I talked to Senator Gudger. This is before his jet ski accident. Yeah. So I don't know if he's going to try it again, but he said that he was going to. Talking to some of these House guys, the Speaker, they don't seem like they're really wanting to do this.
Well, I don't think
again.
the House, and I don't think the Speaker would want to initiate it this year like he did last year.
Well, imagine telling your members.
But if the Senate passed it, would they kind of get into a back and forth and try to figure it out? Probably.
Imagine telling your members who walked the plank. I think there's going to be repercussions here for some of these members who typically wouldn't vote for this kind of thing, but we're told you must vote for it, or you're not going to get your bills passed.
Your district funding.
You got to get your district funding pulled. You got to get your committee assignments pulled, and they had to walk the plank and vote for this. I think they're going to face repercussions. They may not. It may not beat them, but it's going to put them in a political situation. They're going to have to run against somebody who is anti-gambling. And they have to spend money, they have to raise money, they have to work for their seat again, and I just think there's going to be consequences for what happened.
Yeah, I think there's probably, in the House, there's probably 15 or so of those maybe, something like that. I started to say 15 or 20, maybe something like that, that, boy, didn't want to go there, but just felt obligated to.
Yeah, because the weird thing about this speaker, I like Speaker Ledbetter a lot, but it was a little true of Mac McCutcheon as well, is that the House is always seeking these big vote totals. You notice like the very beginning of the session, or even the first year of the session, things are passing like, but they're passing with these like incredible vote totals with near unanimity, like with 3 dissenting votes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy, right?
Yeah, not a lot of back and forth. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, I want to get your opinion on the next state election cycle coming up. We'll have governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, state treasurer. I mean, it's going to be a big turnover in 2 years from now. All right, so let's talk about that when we come back. Jeff Poore with us in studio, and that'll wrap it up. We'll be right back. And our last few moments in studio with Jeff Poore, 1819 News, and the Jeff Poore Show. Look him up on all the podcast platforms. Is that the best way to find it? Jeff Poore Show? You'll find it.
You'll find it. Twitter.com/Jeff_Poore. I tend to tweet all my stuff out.
You do? You do? Very good. All right, let's talk about here in the state. We got the national election going on, but 2 years from now it'll be, really a lot of our statewide stuff will pretty much be over because it's really about the primaries in the state for the statewide votes. What do you anticipate seeing in the governor? Let's just hit a few real quick.
Governor,
what do you think?
Ainsworth's the front runner right now, but things happen in Alabama. But, remember when Bradley Burr was the front runner, right? We got Governor Bentley.
Yeah.
I'm not quite ready to coordinate him governor, but what will Steve Marshall do?
Well, you got Steve Marshall hanging out there. I hear you could have Tommy Tuberville hanging out there.
You got Rick Pate potentially
Rick Pate,
running.
Ag Commissioner. Yep.
Yeah. So what does Tuberville do? Probably a lot of that will tell us a lot. Does he go work for Trump? He says he's not, but or would he run for something else, or we just go off and retire at the beach or whatever? But that's kind of what we're waiting to see, because if something opens up where you don't have a Marshall Ainsworth head to head, what does Marshall go and do? And then that's sort of there's no lane for Marshall right now.
No. Okay. Lieutenant Governor.
I think Tweakle Kavanaugh will run. I think John Merrill will probably run. I think Wes Allen might run because he doesn't want to get trapped in the Secretary of State job. Yeah. And, then he gets termed out. Well, what's he going to run for?
There's nothing really opening up that next time around. Yeah.
And kind of there's a little bit of a history with Wes Allen and John Merrill. It'll be kind of interesting to watch. But Twinkle will raise a bunch of money. She's formidable.
Got the name recognition.
Yeah. So she'll be there, I think.
Let's go AG.
AG's
Steve
tough.
Marshall will be out.
Steve Marshall will be out. I would watch J-Town, the former prosecutor up in Huntsville. There may be somebody come off the Supreme Court and run. I think Mitchell will potentially.
Maybe Will Sellers.
Yeah, somebody could. But that's an interesting one because there's not really a lot of buzz about that right now.
And treasurer. Now, people don't think a lot about treasurer, but it's an important position.
Yeah, and won't be young. What's the young boys are going to do? Name I'd watch gambling.
Yeah,
Andy Witt.
Yep,
run for treasurer.
I have heard that, not from him, but I have heard that rumor.
The rumor was that he was going to McMillan. Not McMillan.
He's a finance guy anyway.
Boozer would go head to gambling commission if gambling had passed, and that would have opened up a door for a KIA to appoint Andy Witt. To treasurer, but I think he's definitely interested in it. But that's one of these offices.
Yeah,
we wait and see wherever all the other pieces come together, and then some others come in.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of interesting. Well, that's interesting with Wes Allen and Lieutenant Governor, which you can't run for both. So which that would open up Secretary of State
potentially. Yeah, and I have not
no
heard
idea.
Anybody look for some probate judges. From around the state. Well, what's Jim Ziegler, one of my employees at 1819 News, going to do? You know, another interesting one, Ag Commissioner Rick Pate can't run again. Jack Williams, the state senator,
he's running already.
He was in the parade last week.
I was at an event with him in Blount County a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
He said, I'm running.
He's been on the show talking about it. He's the early front runner there. That's an important office too.
Oh, it really is. That's you got UAB, it's big, and but ag here in the state, farming. Ooh,
what
huge.
will Andrew Sorrell do? Who's the current state auditor?
Yeah.
Will he stay put, or will he look to go maybe run for Secretary of State?
Yeah, because you've sort of got him, Andrew, and you've got Wes Allen at auditor and Secretary of State that they could serve another 4 years
If they wanted to.
But like you say, what are they going to do? Just swap jobs in the next cycle?
Right.
I mean, because there won't really be a natural place to go from there, because all those others will just be in their first term.
Because they'll run their first term, and then they'll have the power of incumbency.
Yeah.
And win a second term if they so choose.
Yeah, very, very
One
interesting.
possibility here, I don't think it was an accident, that Steve Marshall was up in New York with Donald Trump.
He was.
Would Steve Marshall go work for Donald Trump in the Trump administration?
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
I think he's interested.
In the administration or even as Attorney General.
Yeah, well, Donald Trump doesn't have the best of luck with Alabama attorney generals.
Well,
Jeff Sessions, Luther
Well,
Strange.
that's true. That's true, but he's been willing to go Alabama on it.
Yeah, well, I mean, Trump had to invite him up there, so he's certainly aware of General Marshall.
Yeah. Well, thank you, man. Thank you for your time. You
Well,
gave
thanks
us
for
a
putting
lot
up with
here.
me.
You
Yeah,
gave us a ton.
An hour and a half of
Well, yeah,
Jeff
well, look,
Poor
you
here.
gave me more time here at once than I've probably given you at all the appearances on your show.
Well, it's good to get another studios every now and then.
Yeah, it is. It's fun. Well, I'll get back on with you soon, and we'll keep the conversations going, and we'll have you on by phone and stuff sometimes too, as well here. But good to break the ice in person.
Hey, well, thanks for having me on.
Good stuff. 1819 News. You want to check it out, and the Jeff Poor Show out of South Alabama. Oh, Congressional District 2. What's your thoughts? I just drove through there this weekend. I saw a lot of Dobson signs.
The candidates don't matter. Whoever wins the presidential election, since we have straight ticket voting in Alabama, if Biden wins AL2 or Trump wins AL2, that's who the Dobson are
all about
figures.
Turnout for the presidential.
It's all top of the ballot.
Down ballot.
Yeah.
Mm. So who it is doesn't even matter.
I don't think so. I think it could be
It's
whoever
who turns out, more Biden
Republicans
voters
or Democrats.
Yeah, very good. All righty. Have a good evening, everybody. God bless. We'll be back on Tuesday. We'll keep you up to date on what's happening in Milwaukee and all the updates concerning the attempted assassination this weekend as well. God bless.